What is going on, guys? It's the Mad Dragon. We're back checking out some teams that I think should be selected. We did one of these videos for Ireland versus Italy. I'm going to go through each of them because there's no rugby this weekend, so we might as well pick a bit of a team we fancy seeing. So England versus Wales going to be coming up. Both teams are going to be looking to have a big game for this one. I think both teams have been probably a little bit less impressive than we expected them to be. Wales have definitely taken a step up, but you could argue in both of their games have been lucky to get a win. And England, of course, had that travesty of a game against Scotland, who have shown improvement against Italy. But then, you know, it is Italy. Whether or not that team has improved too much is quite hard to dictate. So both teams have got to show up to this game to really be the one to prove the point that they are the better team. And as a Wales supporter, I'll be hoping that Wales don't let this be the game they finally decide to lose. So what we do in this is I go through the team I would like to see selected for both teams going into this game. This is, of course, open to a bit of conjecture towards injury. I've tried my best to find out who's injured and who isn't injured and who will be able to make the game. So, starting off with the England team. I think the front row especially has been very different in that Italy game to what we saw in the Scotland game. So I'd pretty much keep across the board. Marco Vunipola, I think, is playing very well. I'm aware he's got a bit of an ankle injury, I believe. So I did see him on ice, but I haven't seen anything to say that he should be out of this game as of yet. So he's going to go at my number one. Cowan Dickey was super impressive to me. Really aggressive. So he's going to take 2. Kyle Sinclair had the best game I think I've seen him play in a long time in that Italy game, so he's got to take number 3 for me. Number 4 is always going to be that man Itoje. I think that's pretty set for England now. Johnny Hill's been playing really well, actually. Really impressed me in that Italy game. I think I picked him for my team of the week, actually, Johnny Hill. Thought he played very well in that 5 position, so he's going to keep 5. At number 6, of course, no Sam Underhill. Is definitely not going to be in that team. A couple of replacements have come in, but no one's really stood out that to me. However, Courtney Lawes actually had a relatively decent game against Italy. Of course, it's whether or not they'll be able to do this against potentially a stronger depth team. But Courtney Lawes has impressed, so I'm going to give Courtney Lawes my number 6 shirt. And then Tom Curry's going to take 7 because I just think Tom Curry's fantastic. I think he had a terrible game against Scotland, but that game against Italy really went above and beyond, trying to prove he deserves that number 7 shirt. I think Tom Curry has to go into that 7. At number 8, I have gone for Billy Vunipola here, and I was tempted to put Ben Earl in here. I think he was doing much better. Vunipola's not been as impressive recently, far fewer carries than we normally see him doing and not being as aggressive. The main reason I haven't put Ben Earl in here is I believe he can play number 8, but I definitely more see him as a flanker. So what I'm probably going to do here is I put Vunipola on here, who I know is a dedicated 8, and I'd probably move Ben Earl onto the bench, knowing that if Vunipola picked up an injury or fatigue started coming in, I could at least bring him on as a replacement, but you start the game with the set 8. At number 9, to me, Ben Youngs hasn't been as impressive as I would want him to be. So I would make a swap here to Robson. I think Robson, I didn't have the best game when he came on against Scotland, as any of this England team did. But in that Italy team, he certainly showed he's got a little bit more to his range in the game. So I would probably start off with Robson here, give him a bit of a chance and show Ben Youngs he needs to make that step up, or otherwise it's not worth being in the team. This will be where a lot of people will probably disagree, but personally in this backfield now, I haven't been impressed by Farrell at all. I think he's having a really bad tournament. Whether he should be dropped from the whole team entirely is up for your own debate, whether or not you think that. But to me, he doesn't belong in this starting 15. He's almost become a bit of a hindrance to this England team, slowing them down an awful lot, kicking away ball that they just there's no reason to. So for me personally, I would move Ford here at 10. I think you have a solid game with Ford as your fly half, and you try and base the game around him as a fly half. May, of course, will keep that 11 position. I don't even know if anyone can contest for that 11 position. I think Johnny May will always have that number 11 position, even though I don't think he's played superbly through this tournament so far. But what I would do then is move Slade to 12, and you create sort of like a mini Farrell out of Slade. I'm aware Slade can also do a bit of fly half work, so I think it's worth moving Slade in, teach him what sort of Farrell was doing, being your sort of second playmaker in the team. Have Slade at 12. He's in good form, especially in running. We haven't seen him do a lot of kicks, but I think he's playing well. I would definitely move Slade into 12, and that way you can remove Farrell from the game. It also gives you another centre, and a centre I definitely want to see is Adogwu. Where is he? I really want to see him. I haven't heard of any injury that's ruled him out. I think a couple of people here might go for Ollie Lawrence. But I really want to see him. I think one of the biggest weaknesses in the Welsh defence currently is they're very good at going man on man, and that defensive strategy works very well until you come up against someone that's a bit bigger and is going to take 2 men to tackle. And from everything that I've seen of Adogwu, he is absolutely that guy who's going to take multiple people with him. So I think it's worth having him to try and open up spaces, and that's why I put him in number 13. Although a big game, of course, to try and make your debut for England playing Wales at home. But that's who I'm going to go for number 13. Number 14, Watson, has been much more impressive to me in that second game, trying to get a few more tries and a bit more running meters. He needs a bit of space to work is the only thing for Watson, and once he gets it, he can show off a little bit. But I think he's definitely doing enough to manage to hold that 14 position. And another big change here, to me, Elliot Daly's been really poor. I know he got a try in that last game, but to me it felt very undeserved for the performance he put in. He was probably, to me, the weakest player on that England team in that Italy game. So to me, yeah, I haven't seen a lot from Elliot Daly. I'm sure a couple of people would probably disagree with that. So I'd probably like to make a little switch up there. I would like to see Max Malins come in here. I think he's a very good player. I do believe he can play fullback. I think is he like a fly half fullback sort of player? So I think he can play fullback, and I think it's worth telling Daly, if you don't play well, you won't be in the team. I think these calls need to be made by Eddie Jones. So there's a couple of big decisions there which some people might disagree with, but that's going to be my 1 to 15. Moving on to the subs, I think we're going to go back to putting on a few players that were in, of course, in that first game. First person I'd like to see a bit more from is, of course, Obano. We haven't got to see a great deal of him so far in this tournament, so it's definitely going to be worth seeing potentially in this Wales game. Jamie George, I think, is a good sub to have on at some point. We know how good he is in that hooker position. He had a terrible game against Scotland, but I definitely think bringing him on in the second half when teams are a bit more tired, you get those driving mauls. You know he's a good carry at the back of the maul, so I think he's worth having on the bench. Stewart, of course, will come on as well in that front row, do some big replacements. Wilson, I think, is worth going on at 19. I think he can play a couple of positions, so he's definitely going to be, again, a bit of a useful sub. And then, of course, as I said, Earl I would have coming on in that 20 position, maybe to cover a number 8, maybe to cover a flanker position, depending on who wanted to go off. So I would have that. And to be honest, this is where I think a big call will come for me. I would like to see far more of Harry Randall. I haven't seen anything from him. Where is he? Ben Youngs, to me, is not doing very well at all, and I think this could be a big game to make a shout out and say, you need to make the change. I did think we were going to get to see Randall against the Italy team, which, you know, didn't come, of course. They still started with Ben Youngs for that game, I think. So I think, to me, here, you drop Ben Youngs completely, you start off with Robson, and then you have Randall come on in the second half to add a bit of youth, a bit of energy into the team is what I like to be seeing. Number 22, I mean, you can't remove him from the team entirely. He is the captain, and he is a bit of an influence in the game. So I would have Farrell on, mainly because he covers a couple of positions for me. You could bring him on at 10, or you could bring him on at the 12 position. So whether you wanted Slade or Ford to go off, depending on how the game was going, you could make an adjustment accordingly. So I think it's worth having Farrell on the bench to bring him on later. And then finally, of course, Daly. And to be honest, I think I'm being quite generous to Daly here. I mainly have Daly there because I'm not really sure who else could play fullback if not him. So I think he's still, you know, he's a good player. He is at a good standard. He's just not having a good tournament. So it's definitely worth having him on the bench to bring on later in that game. And it means you could even move Max Malins. You might not even have to take him off. You could take someone else and move Max Malins to a different position and then have Daly come on. But that's going to be my 23 for the England team of people who I think should be selected. Moving on to Wales. Starting off in that front row. In all honesty, there's not going to be a great deal of changes here. The Wales team is looking relatively solid and not what I was expecting going into this tournament, having seen how they played in that Autumn Nations Cup and of course last year's Six Nations, which as a Wales player I'll just try to forget about. But currently so many of these players really making a big step up, so I keep this front row exactly the same. Wyn Jones, Ken Owens, Tom Francis, all three of them have played solidly in both games, so there's no point making any changes to me there. They're playing really well. Adam Beard's been very impressive. Did see he was in a couple of different people's team of the weeks. They're really enjoying seeing a bit of Adam Beard back in the side, so we'd keep him in. Alan Wyn Jones is always going to retain that 5. I mean, if Corey Hill was sort of available to fill that 5, you know, you could argue Corey Hill should go in there, but Alan Wyn Jones is always going to be in that team, and of course we'll take the captaincy. Wainwright, I thought, played very well in that number 6 position against Scotland, so there's no point in making any changes, trying to move him about. And I'm not sure if Navidi's going to come back from his injury. I know he went out sort of in that first round. Maybe he would come back, but I currently haven't seen anything about injuries coming back into the team. Tipuric's got to take 7. I think Tipuric is still one of the best players in the world. I think he's absolutely fantastic. And to be honest, Faletau's doing pretty well as well at that number 8 shirt. And to me, he's not letting the team down at all. He's got some really strong tackle numbers in there, so I think he's playing well. And I'd like to see him do a few more carries potentially off the back of a scrum. Get back to the Faletau we used to see and love, where he used to run with the ball a little bit more. But I definitely think it's worth having Faletau in the team currently. The halfbacks positions I'm definitely going to want to switch up. Gareth Davis and Dan Biggar were terrible, in all honesty, in that Scotland game. I was shaking my head with some of the decisions. Gareth Davis, of course, also had that ridiculous grubber kick in the Ireland game. God knows what's happening with him. Of course, they have other injuries in that scrum half position. We have Rhys Webb saying he doesn't want to be in the team if he's seen as a third choice scrum half. So there's a couple of big things going on there. So my number 10, I think Kieran Hardy and Sheedy, when they came on, played brilliantly against that Scotland team. They really held it together. I've seen how good Sheedy's been, even at the international standard already, with so few caps, even playing England, of course, in that Autumn Nations Cup. I think they're doing well, and I think it's worth the switch here. Give them time. Give them time to make these big games happen. So, to me, Hardy and Sheedy would make my 9 and 10. The back row's up for a little bit of contesting here. From what I've seen, it's looking like George North could come back into the team after his injury with the whole thing with Robbie Henshaw scratching him in the eyes and he having a bit of a corner issue. I believe he can come back into this team, and I know this is where a couple of people for 11 might say Josh Adams is also available for this game. He will be coming back into that team. So to me, I think a lot of people might want to see Josh Adams coming in there. But to me, George North has been playing so well recently. When you look at him in the Ospreys, he did okay at 13, which I did slate when Pivac put him in that 13 position to play Ireland. Didn't think it was going to go well. He had a good game. I think he even got a try. So to me, George North is worth going on the wing. It just depends what wing. North used to play 11, but I am aware that Rhys Zammit can also play 11. With Liam Williams being moved to fullback in my team, with Halfpenny being injured, I think anyone could sort of move anywhere, but Rhys Zammit's playing well at 14. So as you can see, my 11 and 14 is the same names. It's just whichever way round they would end up playing. I'm not really sure who would play where. Personally, I would put Rhys Zammit at 11 and then have North play 14, because I think Rhys Zammit currently is in such good form you could put him on either wing and perform brilliantly, whereas I've only seen North performing very well in that 14 shirt for the Ospreys. So I don't know whether he'd enjoy going back to that 11 shirt or whether Rhys Zammit would be a better pick, but that would be my 11 and 14. And then my 2 centres, Halaholo's been really impressive in that game that I saw him in, making his debut, coming on, solid tackles, going all over the place, doing really well. And then at 13, I would have Watkin. To me, Tompkins hasn't been playing as well as we expected him to. Not his own fault. He's been playing 12 a lot of times, which isn't his role. He likes to play that 13 shirt. But Watkin and Halaholo defensively were superb in that Scotland game. There were so many tackles that just needed to be made, that both of them got every single tackle 100%, including in that 80th minute from Watkin managing to get 2 tackles in about 5 seconds difference, stopping 2 different players from making the breakaway try. Fantastic play. So to me, Halaholo and Watkin should absolutely take 12 and 13. And at 15, I would move Liam Williams back. I don't know if Halfpenny is out with the injury. Of course, he got hit in the air. So I don't know if he's out with an injury, but the way he went off the field would suggest to me he's taken a big knock, so it's more than likely he might not appear in this game, so that's why I've moved Liam Williams back to that 15. So that's my 1 to 15 of who I think should start for the Wales team, and then finally we will look at the subs, in which not a great deal of changes there. Of course, Roger Jones, Elliot Dee and Leon Brown, all 3 playing well again. Solid replacements. Leon Brown's taken a real step up recently into that international stage. The first time I saw him on the international field, he seemed to be a little bit all over the place, a little bit excited. So I'm nice to see that he's settled down into his game and a lot more professional. Really enjoying seeing Leon Brown getting a little bit more. Will Rowlands, I'm sure, will come on. I imagine for Adam Beard, maybe in that second half is where I'd have Will Rowlands come on. Both of them will come in that 20 shirt. That's mainly down to there being so many injuries in this Wales team across the flanker positions there. There's not a lot of people left, but James Botham's always a good player to have on. 21, again, same issue with the scrum halves. A lot of injuries across the board. I think Gareth Davis coming on in that 60th minute or something could be worthwhile. I think he needs to learn. He needs to step up. He used to be so good for Wales, and I think he's got a little bit safe now knowing he's just in the team. I think he needs to be moved to the bench a little bit more. And then the big call here that a couple of you might disagree with is I would remove Biggar from this team completely for a game and just let him know that he doesn't necessarily have that shirt absolutely on lockdown. To me, Jared Edwards was named in the team before the tournament started, and I've seen no news about injuries or him being released to go back to club level as of yet. So I believe Jared Evans is still in the training camp with him and is right in there. And I like Jared Evans. I think he's a great player. He can play 10. I've also seen him play 12, which I'm not sure is his happy position, but he can do both. I like Jared Evans, so I think I would have Jared Evans on the bench to come on in that second half, maybe try and sit out the game. Good kicking percentages, hopefully try and get some scores on the board, and then finally I would finish it off with Josh Adams, of course, coming back out of injury. A lot of people love Josh Adams. He's a solid runner. He's very, very quick, so I think, again, in that second half, people are getting tired, a few more bit of room opening up. Maybe North hasn't had a good game on his wing. I think that's the time you want to bring Josh Adams on. The speedster coming on against a tireder team, and I think that's where you'll be able to do the most damage. So that's my 23 for the Wales versus England game that's going to be coming up. Really looking forward to that game. I think it's going to be such a tight-knit affair. I think both teams could be arguing over who's going to be able to win that one. I think that's going to be a super, super close game. But drop it down in the comments what you think of the teams, guys. Who would you replace? Is there anyone that you agree with, anyone you disagree with? Make sure you drop it down in the comments. I am going to do one of these for the final game as well, so make sure you subscribe to the channel just to keep up to date with all of the latest videos as they're going out. I really can't wait for round 3. I hope you've all enjoyed today, guys. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.